Hello and welcome back, all 2,853 subscribers. I think that's right. Today we're going to be discussing whether Lewis Hamilton actually has a chance at a world title. I think it's a fairly simple question. I think the answer is resounding yes, he has a chance. But how much of a chance does he realistically have? I mean, okay, so we're going to break this down. In my opinion, just to say off the bat, I think Ferrari will give Lewis a somewhat championship contending car. How much or how competitive it will be is to be seen. Obviously, we don't know. But judging how they performed in 2024, I think they were on balance. I mean, they did get second in the championship, but on balance, they were making good progress. Obviously, McLaren were the lead runners. I think on balance, they kind of had a better car than Red Bull, but Max definitely maximized. Max maximized more than everyone in the whole field. So it was pretty difficult to catch him. But I feel like they had what was the third best car, which rose to the second best car of the season. And really and truly, by the end of the season, they were getting pretty close to car performance with the McLarens. Even though I do still think McLaren's at the edge, I don't think it's a big stretch to say that Ferrari are going into 2025 with a lot of good momentum. There's a lot of hope behind them. Obviously, with Lewis joining, there's a lot of motivation behind them. But now it's okay, crunch time. None of this will Lewis drive for Ferrari? Everyone's very happy to have him at Ferrari, I'm sure. But when the rubber hits the road, when the lights actually go out, and he is in a Ferrari car, are they going to manage to give him a car worthy of a world championship? And I think the answer is most likely yes. I think there's a great chance. He's most likely going to get a car that can win. That's almost for certain. Especially, I'm going to talk about it in another episode, how much I believe Red Bull are going to struggle next year with the fact that I don't think Max can keep, bailing them out. It was getting pretty difficult in 2024. It's going to be near impossible 2025 if they carry on the way they ended last year. So with all that in mind, I think Ferrari have a great chance of having a race-winning car. And with, obviously, McLaren kind of bottling it a bit, we know that there's going to be opportunities. I don't think the question is really and truly, is Ferrari going to give him the car? I think it's whether he can beat Charles. Charles is... I actually need to gather myself for a second. Charles is a very confusing driver. Obviously, he came in 2019 and really and truly, he just took it to Seb. We weren't expecting him to do that. 2020, Seb's last year, I think it was pretty clear to see that Charles was the faster of the two. 1, 2, 3, 4 with Carlos Sainz. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, and 4 with Carlos Sainz. 21, 22, 23, 24 with Carlos Sainz. I think he obviously did have a bit more on Sainz overall, especially in years like 2022. But at the same time, it was very close. I think it was more tight between Charles and Carlos than Charles and Seb. As far as Lewis goes, though, obviously, Charles has been very nice and, he's great to have Lewis on a team, and obviously he's going to say that. But you do get, he does make, I don't call them slip-up comments, but almost comments I really want Lewis in a team so that I can beat him. He really is hungry to defeat Lewis. And especially if they give it a championship-winning car, if he beats Lewis in a equal machinery to a championship-winning car, I think he'd be very motivated to do such a thing. And obviously, he knows he's going to be in the team long-term. He's going to know that, look, we don't know how long Lewis is going to be here for. Maybe Lewis is going to be here for 3 years. He needs to start doing it now. He needs to prove that he is truly the best driver on the grid. Because although he got beaten in 2022, although, he has his fair share of issues, he's been improving so much in his tyre wear. He's been improving so much to be fair, his qualifying pace has always been incredible, the best on the field. I think it's now time for him to genuinely go, you know what, I'm the best on the field and I'm going to take it to the championship. The championship? No. I'm going to take it to the end of the season and win a championship. Lewis is in a slightly different that's a tongue twister. See, we don't always get the podcast first time. Lewis is in a bit more of a weird predicament because of that. And Charles is getting more difficult and difficult to beat. I don't think Charles is the same person in 2022 that he is now. I think that's pretty obvious. But I think this puts Lewis in a bit of a weird predicament because I don't think Lewis is going to get necessarily like preferential treatment. He's going to get treated well at Ferrari, I do believe so, especially with his connection to Fred Vasseur. But I don't think he's going to get, the preferential treatment that like Sebastian Vettel got in like 2019, where they gave him treatment that would indicate that they still, at least in part, treat him as the number one driver. Lewis is going to get equal, if not slightly worse treatment, in my opinion, to Charles. That's just my opinion of what I think the setup at Ferrari will be, because that's the most fair. They've got two superstar drivers. There's no way after all this investment in Charles, they're just going to essentially disrespect him and throw him to the side just because Lewis is coming. I think they're going to try and be as fair and as equal as possible. But it's not going to be a walk in the park or a straight I'm the number one driver because I'm a seven-time world champion for Lewis. And so it's going to pose a little problem for Lewis. Lewis is going to be tested. Lewis is coming off the back of a mixed 2024. Not only do I not think he's going to get a special treatment, but like, obviously, okay, I'm going to preface this to start this off with Lewis now. Lewis is generally speaking a motivated person. I think I have made videos calling Lewis unmotivated with the newer age Mercedes, the 22 reg Mercedes cars. But at the same time, I kind of understand it in a way because of the way the team didn't listen to him. He was slowly getting pushed out of the team. And obviously the nail in the coffin was probably the 1+1 deal with them hoping to kick him out in 2020, end of this season, really. If you think about it, that's crazy. Lewis would have been out of contract by the end of the season, and he would have most likely been kicked out of Mercedes because if Mercedes didn't sign Kimi Antonelli, he was most likely going to get scooped up by a team like Red Bull, who would have been very happy to have a young talent like that on their hands because you never know how long Max Verstappen is going to stay in the sport. So really and truly, Lewis had to go. That was pretty obvious by his body language, by the deal that they gave him, by everyone in the team. George was the future. The future is now, old man. The thing is, though, Lewis's 2024 wasn't exactly stellar. His 2023 was, and he signed the deal before, obviously, 2024 started. I don't think it would have changed anything if he did sign after his performance in the season 2024. But at the same time, we can all agree this is not prime Lewis. It just isn't prime Lewis. Certain mistakes he makes, he doesn't cut through the field in the same way we've seen him do in past seasons. And this could be due to a few things. It doesn't necessarily mean that Lewis is washed. It doesn't necessarily mean that he is absolutely past it and that he can't really work a car the way that he can. But it's pretty obvious something was missing last season. His overtaking ability was missing last season. At least in some part, his ability to just cut through the field just wasn't there last season. It could have just been the car, but we don't know for sure. Times like Brazil where, Russell was pushing for the win, Lewis was in like 17th or like 14th, something obscene. You never really see a teammate dish out Lewis the way George did to Lewis last season. And let's not even get started on that qualifying gap, which I can only imagine is going to be brutal against Charles. I can't guarantee much next season as far as the battle between Lewis and Charles. But if Lewis had problems beating George in qualifying head-to-head last season, oh my word, Charles is going to give him a run for his money. Oh, not even a run for his money. He's going to whoop him. He's going to whoop him. Easy. He's going to whoop him. Charles is easily the best qualifier on the grid. We know this. He's been doing it for ages. Even with inferior cars, he just somehow gets a car onto the front row of the grid, onto pole position. And Lewis, I'm not going to say, Lewis is one of the best qualifiers ever. He just is. He had the most poles ever. But I don't think Lewis is, at least the past couple seasons, or at least, the past couple seasons, I don't really think he's been feeling it, if you know what I'm trying to say. Like, there are certain times where you can see Lewis is, quote-unquote, feeling it, but sometimes he just ain't feeling it. And I think it kind of was a motivation issue with the fact that there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, I'm sure, with Mercedes. And I wonder if that will stop now that he's at Ferrari. Because when Lewis is very pumped up and ready to go, he kind of is unstoppable in a way. Think like 2023 in Hungary. Think Silverstone in 20. Whenever he goes to Silverstone, you just see the most motivated Lewis to race and to win and to do well. And I mean, he's won there 9 times for a reason. I think it's really a testament how much of a mental factor driving is. Obviously, they have their reaction time. Obviously, they have their, their thorough applications and all that kind of stuff. But mentally, in the zone, are they ready to race? Are they ready to risk everything? Are they ready to push that 100% to get the most out of the car, to get the most out of themselves? Sometimes a driver is, well, you should say it all the time, but sometimes a driver is. Sometimes a driver just has that extra limit, that extra push to get there. That doesn't make sense. Doesn't it? It does, kind of. Sometimes the driver just does have an extra, they just have something extra in them to win, to do well. And you see that with Lewis. And I wonder, is he going to have that this season? Because if he does, yes, him and Charles are going to be tight. It's going to be head to head. But if he doesn't, Lewis is going to get smoked. He's going to get smoked. Realistically, the best case scenario that I see this happening is that Lewis beats Charles by not like he doesn't whoop Charles. I don't see a scenario in which Lewis whoops Charles. I see a scenario in which he can beat Charles by a comfortable margin, provided Charles makes some mistakes and Lewis is doing really well. But I also see a scenario in which Lewis doesn't settle in well. Lewis isn't finding that mojo. And we start to see 2024 Lewis against Charles, who is, in my opinion, unarguably better than George. At least in most aspects of being an F1 driver. And so it is really like a techie thing, because I am a Lewis fan. I am a real deep Lewis fan. I ride hard for Lewis, pause. But I've got to understand the facts. The biggest obstacle to Lewis winning a championship is going to be beating Charles. It's going to be beating Charles. Because even if Ferrari gave them a clear fastest car, if Ferrari gave Charles and Lewis the fastest car in the grid, it's going to make it that much harder to beat Charles. It's going to make it basically one-on-one fight. Do you out-qualify Charles in a one-on-one? Do you beat Charles in race pace one-on-one? Do you have better tyre deg than Charles one-on-one? You know what I mean? Like, it makes it just that one-on-one, and it's got to be Lewis versus Charles. And Charles is genuinely very steep opposition. Not downgrading George in any way, because George genuinely is another great driver. But I think Charles is just that slight bit ahead. I think Charles being in Ferrari from 2019 definitely helped his progression. And he just naturally is a very pacey driver. He is one of those drivers that was gifted with a lot of raw natural pace. But I mean, I'm talking all this stuff. But like, at the same time, this is Lewis Hamilton. Lewis does kind of just decide to be like... Give you an example. In Vegas, Lewis just decided, okay, I'm going to be faster than everyone here. Even in Abu Dhabi, he just decided, okay, I'm going to catch 15 seconds. What's the joke? You start one Mercedes driver on pole, you start 1 and 20 if they're both going to finish side by side 6th and 7th. I'm laughing because it's kind of true. It's kind of true. No matter what, that was kind of the joke last season, right? In this scenario, to be fair, Charles does bottle a lot of things. He does bottle a lot of poles. Yeah, he bottles a lot of poles. His pole to win ratio is not positive. Which, I mean, to be fair, a lot of drivers don't have a positive pole to win ratio. But still, Charles's pole to win ratio isn't good at all. All in all, do I think Lewis can win a world championship next year? Yes. Do I think he can beat Charles? Yes. But if Lewis isn't on his A game, Charles isn't only going to beat him, it's not going to be close. Okay, we're going to call that for the episode for this week or for today. It feels good to be back. This is like a little extra ad note. It feels good to be back. It feels good to be talking about F1 again. The season's coming up thick and fast. Should be in about a month and a half, which sounds like a lot of time, but it's not much time. And I'm really excited to see how this turns out. Something deep inside me is saying, okay, this is going to be a boring season. But I hope not. I really hope this has got a lot of twists and turns, and it's got stages where a driver is just on their game, and it's got stages where there's just so many. Just I hope that this is a very action packed and enjoyable season all round. Yeah. See you next time.